How could this get any worse as Kevin O'Connell drops multiple injury updates that are a lot to process, as some are devastating while others seem more hopeful and optimistic in a season that's already riddled with injuries that is going to be a lot for this team to manage in the first half of the year. We're going to break down all that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first, if you're not already a part of the 15% of viewers who are already subscribed to the channel and you want to stay up to date on all things Vikings, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any of the updates when they drop. And with that, let's hop straight into it, which is the multiple injury updates that Kevin O'Connell has dropped earlier this morning. And head coach O'Connell said that tackle Brian O'Neill suffered an MCL sprain and will be week to week. He will not be placed on IR, however, but outside linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel will not practice this week, and the hope is that JJ McCarthy practices some this week. So Brian O'Neill was the big name that we were all looking forward to hearing about today as far as what the diagnosis would be on his knee. Now that we know it's an MCL sprain, at least we know that it will not result in him going on IR and missing at least 4 games. Kevin O'Connell speaking on the injury, saying he avoided the serious nature knee injuries that when you first go out there as a head coach, you see him down like that, you're glad you can rule out a lot of those other things. And this is in a week where we just saw Tyreek Hill last night dislocate his knee. We saw Malik Neighbors go down with a torn ACL. We've seen a lot of players have their seasons completely ended already in the first quarter of the season, and thankfully Brian O'Neill is not going to be one of those players, as he did avoid going on IR and did avoid a MCL tear, which would have been absolutely devastating for this team. But even just having him out for 4 games, even that is going to be a very big blow to this team, but at least they can use the bye to get through that. As he said, I would consider him week to week, and with our bye is with where our bye is, I don't see short-term IR as being a necessity at this point, just because with the rules that not counting toward that time frame. So at least this is something where maybe we have him right out of that bye week after this Europe trip. He can go home, he can rehab, be with the team facilities and all of that. He won't have to worry about staying over in England for the time change and things like that and all the medical stuff that they have over there versus the stuff that they would have in the US with the team facilities already being in-house and things like that, not having to outsource anything. So having him there, going to be great for his rehab. We know that this Vikings training staff has typically been very great at rehabbing players. It's just that the attrition hasn't necessarily been there, especially with this offensive line. Like I said in our last video, we invested so much in this offensive line and we haven't seen any of them all play a game at the same time together. And it's been a very, very difficult start to the season for this offensive line and in turn our quarterbacks and our offense as a direct result of that. And we saw that on full display on Sunday morning against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Ireland, where those bad interceptions, that was something that could have been it couldn't have been avoided for Carson Wentz unless he had those players in there. But Kevin O'Connell said the team will continue to evaluate combinations of players and roles. He emphasized that he was impressed by left tackle Darrisaw playing all 76 plays in his second game of the season. He was really proud of him. So at least that is something for Vikings fans to be happy about because of the offensive line woes that we've had with the injuries. At least Darrisaw, that is a big element of our offensive line that we cannot lose. We lost that last year and we saw the hole that it left. Cam Robinson was decent but not good enough. Darrisaw was obviously much better. He's an all-pro and things like that. But having him there and being healthy is going to be a huge thing towards setting that edge, especially when we play against Myles Garrett on Sunday morning again, this time in London, UK. But the injury updates didn't stop there, of course, as he did touch on the Andrew Van Ginkel injury, saying, I don't expect him to practice this week, but what I would say is he's rehabbing and he's feeling like he's progressing. We're evaluating every avenue and all options to get him feeling 100% to getting back out there, and I'm hoping that timeline is ongoing and we're on our way to doing so. And Andrew Van Ginkel is a player that we haven't seen too much of this season. He played in that first game against the Bears and he made a big impact. Then he played in that Cincinnati game very limitedly, but he still made an impact and got 2 sacks, then left the game again with that neck injury. So this is something that's been nagging at him a lot. And yes, I know that these early games not having these players is big, but when you look at the Minnesota Vikings schedule, it's only going to get way worse from here. We have a pain in the ass of a stretch of road games coming up through that second half of the season where we are going to be on the road a lot, traveling a lot, going to different facilities. So we want to make sure that all of our guys are 100% healthy. So like I've said before, if this is a scenario where the Vikings are dealing with the injury bug early in the season rather than later in the season, I would much rather have it be earlier in the season, because if we can stay above 500 or at 500 for the first half of the season while these injuries are getting sorted out, in the second half of the season we have everybody clicking on full cylinders, That's what you need. You have that momentum going into the postseason. That could be exactly what this Vikings team needs, because when you look at the Rams last year, they were an 11-6 team that played like a 14-3 team. They played as good as the Vikings did in that last half of the season. And a big part of that was them not being able to figure out their defense and having a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball. Minnesota is in a similar situation where, yeah, this early part of the season, it's going to be tough to navigate. It's going to be rough. It's going to be stressful for fans. But if this is a scenario where Minnesota deals with the injury bug earlier in the season rather than later, you have everybody healthy and clicking in the second half of the season, I would much rather have that momentum to carry into the postseason, because if you have that injury bug later in the season, you're going into the postseason depleted. Guys still trying to get back into the swing of things. But at least if you have it earlier, all these guys are going to be ready. They're going to be rolling. They're going to be going through these road teams that are going to be like playoff games for the Vikings, especially if they are only at 500 or a couple games above 500 by the midpoint of the season. When you get into that long road trip they're going to be having coming up, they're going to treat every single game like it's a playoff game. So they're already going to be in that playoff mentality of fighting for their season every single week. 1-0 every single week. You hear Kevin O'Connell talk about it all the time. So that's going to be the biggest thing for Minnesota. I know it sucks, fans, but if we can deal with this earlier in the season rather than later, I think we'll be a lot happier, and hopefully that the injuries don't stay very serious and they still stay as these kind of week-to-week happenings. But of course, JJ McCarthy was another one that Kevin O'Connell touched on, saying that I'm hoping we can at least get him out there and get him taking some drops, and I'm starting to get back into the normal rhythm of the practice week. It will all depend on kind of where he's at with the benchmarks and being able to go out there and start moving around a little bit. He was talking about how the short week kind of thing really screwed JJ over a little bit, and everyone's going to say this is the NFL. You have to adjust on a week-to-week basis, especially on a short week when you got to turn around. But he went from a primetime Monday night game that was full of emotions, good and bad, then into a short week on another primetime game against the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday night. That was another big-time game where he did get injured. He had a lot of struggles, so there was a lot of things going on there, but that is the NFL. You have to adjust to that. So, like I've said before, with this injury, hopefully this is something where he just needed an extra break. And yes, the injury, of course, is a very real thing. But that injury might have been beneficial to him for having a little bit of a breather from saying, okay, I got my first ass whoopings in the NFL. Okay, I kind of got my bearings a little bit. Now I know what to expect. Now you can go into this next part of the season when the team is getting healthier and really start to attack it. So hopefully that is what happens here with JJ McCarthy, as we know that everybody is going to have eyes on him once he steps back onto that practice field even. And when we get back into the regular season games with him starting, that'll be a lot of eyeballs and a lot of scrutiny and a lot of media buzz coming around that. But Kevin O'Connell also said that he believes that the Vikings will be opening the 21-day window evaluation for fullback CJ Ham, which we need him back. He's a very big pillar of this offense at times. And outside linebacker Tyler Batty, both were placed on injured reserve, designated to return when Minnesota is making their reductions to 53 players. Both of those guys should have their windows open and start working their way towards returning, O'Connell said. When their return would be, I don't know. It could be as early as this weekend. It could be at any point during that 21 days. So CJ Ham, that's something that Vikings fans are going to be very, very happy about, because when you look at this run game right now, it's looked all right at times, but it hasn't looked great. Aaron Jones is on IR. He'll be coming back soon. But this Minnesota Vikings offense has basically been just single back and gun formation. Not having CJ Ham there, you throw the I formation out the window entirely, basically, because you don't have that lead blocker with him at fullback just being that glue guy. But you get him back, that might open up the offense a little bit more. And something that was brought up in the last video in the comments section that I thought was really cool that I want to address here as well was that Kevin O'Connell hasn't really adjusted well in his tenure when not having offensive line at full health. It's been very hard for him to he just continues his offensive game plan of just, all right, throw it deep, try and get it to Jefferson, let these routes kind of develop. But when you saw in that Pittsburgh game is Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf torched us on an 80-yard quick slant. That was just boom, right there. It could have been 5-6 yards. He took it all the way to the house. Minnesota needs quick hitting plays like that, especially when this offensive line is decimated, especially when CJ Ham is not there. But you bring CJ Ham back into the fold, opens up the running game, opens up even just giving him some handoffs to catch some teams off guard. And it opens up your passing game as well, where if you can go in the I formation, use him as a blocker, you do a 3-step drop and a quick hitter, boom. That's a different kind of offense entirely. So CJ Ham, in the past couple of years, has kind of been a side piece or not really a big part of this offense, except in some critical moments where we need a big third down conversion or things like that. this is something where now we can kind of open up the offense a little bit more, especially with these offensive line injuries where we need a quick hitting route. Boom, you throw it to CJ Ham in the flat, or you have him as a blocker where it can buy you a little bit more time, and he is a big body that can absolutely do that. So hopefully that is what we end up seeing when CJ Ham comes back. See a little bit more I formation, see him used as a pass blocker, thrown out in the flat as well, especially with JJ McCarthy there. You have Jordan Mason in there as well to kind of throw teams off where you have them going each way. Maybe it opens up some opportunities there, or even just using CJ Ham in a gun formation as a blocker to try and just get some more time in these pass plays. So let these routes develop, or just design more quick hitting routes, KOC, because we saw that we've been getting torched by those all year. Why not flip the tables and let's start torching teams with that same thing? So what do you guys think about all this down in the comments below? Let us know your guys' thoughts. What were your initial reactions when you saw this tweet about all the injury updates? Let us know down in the comments below. But that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. Thank you guys so much for the support over the past 2 weeks. You guys have been great with giving the channel a lot of great views, a lot of great feedback in the comments. Really fun interacting with some of you guys as well and seeing what you guys post in there. So stay tuned for comment of the day being a returning segment to this channel that we haven't done in quite some time. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of comments get thrown in there as the games get going. And if you guys also have seen our Motown Showdown video, I'll link it at the end of this video and I'll link it in the description. If you guys like that video and you want to see more of that, the Vikings are coming back to the Motor City. You guys know I live in Windsor, so that presents another opportunity for another video like that. So if you guys want to see another video like that, let us know down in the comments below. But for now, I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.